Every single one of us, every person alive, we are not built to be God. We're not built to rely on our own strength and our own purposes and our own intelligence and our own will and our own power, because all of those things will end one day. I thought about this as I was writing it because I was supposed to preach this message last week, and as many of you know, we ended up kind of like locked down and quarantined for about a week and a half, just the blessing of COVID, right, in this world. And I was super frustrated because when you're a preacher, there's nothing worse than getting a message ready and you're all cranked up to preach it, and then you realize that you're not going to preach it, and I had to wait. All right, and so I was like, man, I got to put this off. And then I realized that this Sunday was going to fall in between the Democratic convention and the Republican convention. And I thought, you know what, God, you're good. Because, church family, I want you to hear me. There's nothing that you heard last week, and there's nothing that you will hear this next week that will last. There's nothing you heard last week, and there's nothing that you'll hear this next week that can save us. There's no human alive that can save our country, that can save our souls. Look at what the writer says. He says, when this breath departs, he returns to the earth. Right in verse 3, he tells us don't trust in them. Why? Because in them is no salvation. Our plans, our power, our purposes, they will always end. But the good news is that the work and the plans of the Lord endure forever. Read verses 5 through 7 with me. The writer says, blessed is he whose help is the God of Jacob, whose hope is the Lord his God, who made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, who keeps faith forever, who executes justice for the oppressed, and who gives food for the hungry. I love that word, blessed. You know why? Because it's a word that to the Hebrews meant to be more than happy. It was more than just a situational state. It was literally an emotional state that was wholly independent of our temporal situation, our current circumstances. It was a state that instead was wholly dependent on the eternal grace and glory and goodness of God. The writer says, more than happy, intensely happy is he whose help and hope is in God. Why? Because he is the only one who made heaven and earth. Because he is the only one who keeps faith forever. Because he is the only one who executes or accomplishes justice for the oppressed. Because he is the only one who gives food to the hungry. He's the only one that can satisfy the deepest hungers of our souls. Make no mistake, church family, the writer of this psalm is imploring us to look to God as the only one that can be trusted and followed. And so as a result, this year, SEC will be a church that follows and obeys Jesus above everyone else and everything else. I don't care what your politician says. And I want you to hear that, because some of you have already sent me videos and links, and I want you to hear this in as lovingly and a direct way I can. I do not care. Why? Because they're all powerless to do what we need done. I don't care what your cause is that you think everyone else should adopt. If it's not the gospel, it's not worthy to be at the top spot in my life or in our church. Jesus is the only one that we should lift above all things, and Jesus is the only one that we should follow, and he's the only one that we should obey, because while the plans and power of man fade, the purpose and power of God endures forever.